Here is the nicest example of a blue General Electric, I think it's a W-12, that I have ever seen. This thing is absolutely pristine. And cosmetics aside, it runs incredible. The blade is in perfect balance, which is pretty much just like not a thing with these for the most part. Here's the badge, pretty much pristine. Very clean inside. The paint is in excellent condition. You can see the reflection on there, it's so clean. Look at the shine on the surface still. Absolutely remarkable. I don't think that this has really ever been used. You can see the windings are pretty much clean. Maybe this was used for one season, if that. Even the bottom is just about rust-free. Let's take a look at the informations tag, which is actually still there. And that as well is pretty rare. In fact, not only are the informations tag there, all the feet are still there. And they're reasonably pliable still also. Here's the informations. F15 W12, 3 the amps, made in USA. Oh, there's a tripod kick for the video, but at least the camera wasn't on it. It has a drain hole. Look at the shine on those blades. And the frame is just perfect. Absolutely immaculate unit. Unfortunately, this is not mine. It belongs to a friend. But it's here to be serviced before it gets put into use. I would say, normally would say clean and service, but there's really nothing to clean. We can go over the whole thing with melamine foam, and that will make it probably look like it rolled off the assembly line yesterday, or maybe last week. Absolutely stunning. I have never seen one this good. I have a tan one that's pretty decent. It was in the box still, but it doesn't run very good. This one, that's kind of what the marvel is. It looks good and it also works good. These units were so notoriously, horrifically out of balance. This one runs like a dream. You can't even feel the vibration. The only two things that are wrong with it reside within the plug, or within the cord rather. The plug is broken, which is really a shame considering how good the rest of it is. It's been poorly fixed with some electrical tape, which is not a good solution, so we'll probably coat that in hot glue to fix that a little bit better. And then of course the cord is frayed where it goes into the unit, which is a very common failure. This is not to the point where we can't run it yet because it's only one side. It's not going to short out. It's encased in the plastic. It's not going to short against the frame. So we'll be able to test it, but we have to fix that prior to this going back into service. Look at the knob. The shine on there is just unbelievable. This unit dates back to mid-60s, I believe. These are a little bit older than what I'm well versed in. But despite being older than what I typically go for, I do particularly like these. These are probably my favorite box fans from the 60s. I have a lot of nostalgia to these units. My grandfather had a 5-wing, 3-speed reversible model, which I now have. Actually, it's right there. That's the one. So I grew up with that fan. And then when I was in high school, there was one of these in the auto shop. It was beat the heck up and filthy, and the cord was severed off, and it was just sitting under a table. It was there for months and months, and I eventually asked the shop teacher if I could have it, and he gave it to me. And I remember bringing it home on the bus, which was quite the event. So I got one of these when I was in high school, and then a couple years after that, this is probably mid 2010s era, I picked up a 3-speed reversible one at an estate sale, which was in decent condition, but nothing like this. And so between those two, these were these kind of came into my collection early on, and so 15 years later they've become nostalgic. These are excellent quality fans by today's standards, but these were not meant to be the best back in the day. These were actually built down to a cost, and were kind of a disposable product, if you will. These are impossible to service for the average user. There's no way to add oil. It's meant to be used and then discarded when the motor locks up. Now, in GE's defense, and I don't think that this was actually intentional, I think these are lasting way longer than GE ever anticipated. These did last a very long time. These used those unibearing motors, and I'm going to take this one apart on video and service it, so we'll be able to get a better visual at that time. But these used a unibearing motor, which has a lot more surface area than a typical 2-bearing motor, and it had a very large oil well in the back where it held quite a bit of oil. And so between those two things, these did last for many years, even under heavy use conditions, and they're still fairly common in this area. They still turn up from time to time. So they last. They're lasting, and some of them are still in service. I think there's quite a few of these still in service around the country, which is interesting because these are getting to be, 60 years old, and they're still going, which is remarkable. Now, most of these were severely out of balance, and the balance issues are definitely starting to show on the bearings wear. However, again, because the bearing was a unibearing motor with a lot more surface area than typical, it was able to withstand the balance issues a little bit better than standard motors were. So this one, having no bearing or having no balance issues, is just going to run like indefinitely because there's really nothing to wear out on this if it's properly oiled. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in now. We're going to be testing at 118.9 the volts, and these have some pretty serious inrush. I think you can pull up to about 5 or 6 amps on the inrush. Running load should be about 2.5 on high. We'll start up on low. It runs perfectly. I'm gonna go upstairs and grab the windscreen for my microphone so things don't get all wind noisy in this video. I have never come across one of these that has even remotely reasonable balance on the blades. They're always horrifically out. And this one is just absolutely perfect. A little bit of dry bearing noise, but you know, that's understandable for a 60-year-old. Likely never really used bearings. There we go. Come on. There we go. Okay, now there shouldn't be any wind noise. Alright, the medium. Oh, let's check the power information first. 1.89 the amps, 122 the watts, power factor 54. These are horrifically inefficient, there's no doubt about it. These should have been PSC. Westinghouse is making PSC ones by now. Alaska was making PSC ones by now. In fact, 10 plus years prior. Well, not quite 10 years prior. But, within 5 to 10 year range before this, there were PSC box fans on the market. Now this is very powerful, but you're paying for it. Alright, let's go up to the medium. It gets right up to speed. A lot of these, for whatever reason, take a long time to start working properly on medium. Same thing with the Marco motors. I don't know what it is with the mediums on these fans going out, but this one, it goes right up there without being warm. This is 2.18 the amps, 149 the watts, power factor 58. It does become more efficient in terms of air moved per watt as you go up in speed. Pushes quite a strong breeze. Just blew some papers off the table. And what I can't get over is how well balanced this is. There is zero shake to it whatsoever. The blade is in 100% perfect balance. That is so rare. I have never seen or even heard of that being the case on one of these fans. These are always notoriously out of balance. The high. That is running so smooth. I've never seen one of these run like that before. That is unbelievable. It is in perfect balance. That is 2.83 the amps, 196 the watts, power factor 59. The power factor is exceptionally poor on these motors. Again, they were cheap at the time. It was a cheap, kind of cheap quality product. I mean, it wasn't cheap as like its stuff is today, but it wasn't as good as other models. These were the bottom of the barrel, which is hard to believe 60 years later relative to the garbage that's on the market nowadays. I hope I'm not overloading the audio too much. I'm used to having to shout when the fan is on to be heard properly, but I don't have to do that anymore. And I think I'm just looking at the audio meter. I think it was peaking out a bit. I gotta stop shouting. It's a very powerful fan. It's pushing air clear across the room here. And for the noise level, I mean, for the air moved, the noise level is very reasonable. It's, you know, it's loud. You can certainly hear it, but I'm not even sure I would put this above conversation volume. It's a super reasonable noise level. And it moves, these move a tremendous amount of air. But you can feel so much air being drawn into the back of the fan here. Look at this. I don't know what the CFM rating is on these things, or if there even is one, but it's got to be astronomical. It's just so weird to look at one of these and see it running smooth. It's not shaking, it's not vibrating. It even sounds just like it's input down to working properly. That's something you pretty much never see on these. These are typically very rough running fans. And this is just flawless. Really incredible. And it's only going to get better after we add some new oil to the motor. Even as it slows down, it stays in just about perfect balance. And again, to GE's credit, this is a 60-year-old unit that's never been serviced. And look how free the bearings are still. Or the bearing, I should say. It is a heavy steel blade, but that's turning with very little friction. Let's take a quick look at the inrush current, because it's quite high. These meters are not very good at measuring inrush current. I think it was probably more like 5 or 6 amps. It takes the lights down when you turn it on at first. It's no joke. And the airflow is no joke either. Look how much air is recirculating back into that fan. And this is nowhere near the fan, and it's still pulling the air. That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. You just can't get fans like this anymore. They don't exist. And remember, this was not high-end. This was bottom of the barrel, cheap, disposable junk at the time. Yet this can blow anything made today out of the water with ease. There are no box fans like this anymore. There haven't been for a long time. The last thing that would probably come close to this would be a P23, but it has to have the Venturi ring. If it doesn't have the Venturi ring, it just doesn't have the same volume of air movement that this does. I really think that Venturi ring makes a big difference in terms of the volume moved. Look at the shine on those blades. Wow. This really is the nicest example of one of these things I've ever seen. And unless you find one brand new in the box somewhere, you might not see another one like this.